So, hi everyone. Thank you for joining us virtually for this program titled Staying Safe on Our Streets, all about bicycle and pedestrian safety. My name is Brooke Oliveri. I am the manager at the Long Island Health Collaborative, and we work together with the New York Coalition for Transportation Safety to bring you the Walk Safe Long Island initiative, much of which entails educational programming like this program you're attending today. And Walk Safe Long Island is produced for the New York Coalition for Transportation Safety, thanks to a grant from the New York State Governor's Traffic Safety Committee. So just a little more information about the New York Coalition for Transportation Safety and the Long Island Health Collaborative as independent organizations. And once again, we work together to bring you the Walk Safe Long Island initiative. So before we jump in, let's meet our panelists. First up, we have Cynthia Brown. She is the Executive Director at the New York Coalition for Transportation Safety. Also on the panel, Mark Hofacker, Program Director and Child Safety Seat Car Technician at NYCTS, the Coalition. Also on the panel, Lowell Wolf, Program Director at NYCTS. And two very important team members joining us from behind the scenes today, Lynn Margaret Brown, Program Coordinator, Educator, Social Media and Web Manager at NYCTS, and Liz Lee, Administrative Assistant at NYCTS. And now I'm going to turn it over to Cindy.
All right, we're going to talk about pedestrian and bicycle safety today, and we're going to try to help you understand why it's such an important issue on Long Island. We want to educate the public about vehicle and traffic laws that pertain to pedestrian safety, and especially how motorists interact with pedestrians and bicyclists. We want to help. The purpose of this is eventually to reduce the number of pedestrian and bicycle deaths and injuries. We want to give you some of what we consider to be the best practices information to keep peds and bicyclists safe. And we want to advise you of some of the emerging issues that are going to be affecting especially pedestrians, like e-bikes, e-scooters, motorbikes, and all of these devices are now referred to as micromobility, and they are going to have quite an impact on pedestrian safety and their own safety, actually. And we also would like you to recognize how COVID-19 has impacted traffic safety and possibly changed some things for forever. Okay, next. Part of what we're going to talk about today are the laws that pertain to pedestrians and bicyclists so that you know your rights. We're going to talk about hindrances to pedestrians crossing the highway safely or roadway safely. Enhancements that engineers have learned about that they can implement that make it easier for pedestrians to cross a street. There are roadway designs that have been proven to increase safe street crossings for pedestrians. And again, we're going to introduce you to the new micromobility devices like scooters and e-bikes that are eventually going to impact our ability to safely cross streets or ride in bike lanes, as many of these are going to be available near train stations and bus stations and whatever as rentals that you might be able to use to get to your house and back to the station. Okay. This is just a listing of very recent pedestrian deaths, just to show you what an epidemic it is of pedestrians being killed. They're in all different places, even though some are on expressways, and certainly pedestrians are not routinely allowed on expressways, but sometimes you find yourself there because your car breaks down. But these are just examples of pedestrians who between March 30th and April 27th were struck and killed on our roadways. And in the most recent one, which was April 27th, it was a police officer who was struck and killed while assisting someone who was on the expressway. Okay. U.S. pedestrian deaths since the advent of COVID have really, really increased. You can look at numbers, for instance, in Nassau County or even Queens County, there were 30 pedestrian deaths in 2020. And so it looks as though the numbers and the number of bicyclist deaths actually remain virtually the same at 19. So it looks as though, the numbers went down because there were less cars, but the numbers actually went up because there were less cars and way less miles driven. And so the number of people who were killed or injured, pedestrians or bicyclists, does not reflect the miles driven. So, and initially there were very few cars on the road, but now these same cars that were on the road were driving much faster than vehicles were normally allowed to go when there was a lot of traffic. So speed has become a huge factor in pedestrians and bicyclists being struck. And when you're going 100 miles an hour or 80 miles an hour and you're hit by a vehicle, you are not going to survive that crash. So that's another reason that the fatalities have risen so drastically. Next. Oh.
Yeah, what we have here is a list of New York State pedestrian safety laws. Much of this is just basic common sense, but it's still important to go over these rules and not to be lax when it comes to obeying and abiding by the rules. The first item we have here, cross streets at marked crosswalks or intersections, meaning those are the locations that you're designated to walk in. Motorists have the right of way at all locations other than intersections and marked crosswalks. So stick with the old adage, cross at the green, not in between. Stay at the crosswalks where you have a designated right to cross. Obey the walk, don't walk signs. Quite often people are not aware that those signs are even up there. They may be busy looking at their phone. They may have headphones on and not being totally paying attention to what their surroundings are offering them. That can't be. You have to know when to walk and when not to. Follow the signs. Always walk on the sidewalk if there is one. That's, again, common sense. Don't walk in the streets if that's at all possible, because that's just looking for potential injury or fatality to happen. Walk facing traffic. That's something else that many pedestrians are not aware of. You don't go with the flow of traffic, you walk facing the traffic if there is no sidewalk. So if you are in a street because there are no places to walk on the side of the road, make sure that you have some type of visual contact with the cars that are approaching. If at all possible, try to make eye-to-eye contact with the operators of the vehicles. Pedestrians have the right of way when a car is pulling in or out of traffic across a sidewalk. So again, another serious issue. Quite often we have this problem with younger children. They are not aware that maybe somebody is pulling out of a driveway. Again, you have to be very leery and concerned about your surroundings. If you see a vehicle is in reverse, don't assume that they are going to see you. Don't assume that they have some type of rear video camera. Make sure that you wait for that vehicle to go by unless you get waved on by the motorist, as long as they see you. Again, make eye contact with drivers whenever possible to ensure your visibility. You want to guarantee that they know you're there. And also, pedestrians are not allowed on limited access roads, expressways, and interstates, nor are they allowed on entrance or exit ramps for those roads. So essentially keep away from big highways. They're not meant for pedestrians to walk on, and definitely not to cross. Next, please. Okay, what we have here is an aerial shot on the right of your library, as well as the entrance on the left. Very nice library here in Copiague, and nice broad entrance with a lot of space for people to walk into the library. The problem is, as many of you are probably aware, Deauville Boulevard, Deauville is a very crowded street. It gets congested at times. This aerial shot gives you an idea of its location. It's the proximity to Montauk Highway, which we all know is a very busy roadway, especially during rush hours or on the weekends. The flow of traffic getting off Montauk Highway going onto Deauville could be extensive at times. We visited the library several months ago, and it just so happens that there was a food drive taking place at the library. What that meant was very limited space for people to park. It meant that if you were a pedestrian, you had to be very aware of your surroundings because cars were all over the place. Another feature that Deauville has is that island in the middle. That's great for slower moving pedestrians. Unfortunately, though, that island, besides the location on Montauk Highway, that island does not really provide a resting location for pedestrians who may need to take a break. There's no bench there. It's not really suitable for people to wait at. Okay, next slide, please. All right, speaking of that access to Deauville off of Montauk Highway, there happens to be some auto collision stores on that corner. And as a result of that, apparently they have vehicles quite often that are blocking the street. As you can see here, they are parked in a no parking anytime location. That's causing congestion. That's causing greater potential for injuries to pedestrians because they may not see all of the traffic coming. And on the flip side of the coin, vehicle operators may not have the vision that is, or the view necessary to see pedestrians who are attempting to cross. So this is a potentially dangerous location. On the right, we see we're a little bit closer to the entrance to the library. As I mentioned, that particular day, there were many cars parked, as you can see here, in handicapped spaces illegally. The road is very narrow because there are cars on both sides. That may help to, in this instance, may help to slow the flow of vehicular traffic. But again, you have to be careful. You can't just dart out and expect that the motorist is going to see you, especially in a situation like this where their sight visibility, their view of what's happening around them is limited. So this
Well,
makes it extreme. Yeah.
just to note here, and we were not there at the time of day, that there is a school immediately adjacent to this library, and we were not there at the time of day that children would be arriving or departing school. And so we don't see the school buses and the subsequent traffic that parents picking up children would have also generated on this street. So I imagine that that could be very dangerous at 8:30 and 2:30 in the afternoon.
Especially since the school, like you said, is adjacent to, it's just north of the library. And I'm sure that there's a lot of spillover going to the, students who want to go after classes to visit the library. It's the potential for a dangerous situation when there's so much congestion on a relatively narrow road. Next, please. Okay, getting back to the concept of pedestrians and safety in general, we looked at the situation in front of your library. Let's look at it in a more general sense. Do you feel safe walking in your neighborhood? Compared to the picture on the left, how do you feel about that picture on the right? Now, obviously, on the left, we have an ideal situation. We have individuals, pedestrians who are crossing at a designated crosswalk. We have a crosswalk that has been recently painted or maintained. We have people walking in large groups. There's safety in numbers because when you have a large group walking, usually that means it's easier to spot individuals. It's easier to spot those pedestrians crossing. It also appears that you have some instructions and signage that warns, and lighting, flashing lights that warn motorists that you have to stop for pedestrians. Unfortunately, we don't always have that type of safety and infrastructure available in our communities. And an example of, a poor example of that would be on the right, where that lady is walking with her dog. A couple of things wrong with this picture. Obviously, there are no sidewalks, so she is forced to walk in traffic. But as you can see here, she is walking in the same direction as the traffic. That is not a good idea. You want to have, if there are no sidewalks, you want to have a situation in which you are facing the oncoming traffic. You want them to spot you, and you want to make visual eye contact if at all possible. So obviously, that situation on the right is potentially very dangerous. Next slide, please. And again, just to reinforce that issue, what would make you feel safer? Obviously, again, on the left here, we have a no sidewalk situation, whereas we have apparently, looks like the same location at a later date. Sidewalks were installed. The infrastructure was put in place to create sidewalks. I would say the vast majority of individuals would feel that the situation for pedestrians in the photo in the right is desirable because it provides the pedestrians with a designated, relatively safe area where they could walk. There's no need for them to be anywhere near the traffic. This is considered a much safer situation for a pedestrian to be in. Next, please. Okay, and a few pedestrian safety recommendations that we have. Make sure to push the button to get the walk icon. Now, you're not going to find this necessarily on every street corner, but many intersections do have these buttons. The buttons that you press, they work in various ways, but many of them are designed to give pedestrians extra time to cross the street or to give you a notice as to a countdown. So as you can see here, the picture on the right, this is a traffic signal that includes a button to press with a countdown on it. Very important because it gives you the opportunity to know how much time you have to negotiate the street to cross it. This is very important, especially for those who are physically challenged, the elderly, those who walk slowly. Once the walk icon comes on, you may then cross the street, but be sure to watch for turning vehicles. This is a serious situation. Again, many pedestrians make the assumption that they are being seen by the drivers of vehicles, including those vehicles that are tall, height vehicles, high height, like buses, trucks. Be aware that trucks and buses cannot always see a pedestrian who is close to them. Try to signal the driver of this type of vehicle that you are crossing in front of them. The problem is you're under the assumption that a driver who has the height, who has a high place that they're sitting in their truck or in their bus, has a complete view of the road. That's not necessarily the case. Their view might be, their sight is distanced. They can see things far away, but not close up. You could be out of their view, and that can cause a serious situation, especially when they're making a turn. So it's always important, again, eye contact, wave to them if necessary. Make sure that they are aware you're there. Make sure your arm is up in the air so that they could possibly see you much better than just walking across and not being able to completely see you as you're making that walk and they're making that turn. It's a potential for a very dangerous situation. If you walk slowly, as I mentioned before, or require the use of a cane or a walker, always wait for a fresh green signal before crossing. Don't try to rush through that intersection if you're not able to do so. Wait. It's worth the wait. Let the countdown signal come on once again. Wait your turn and then attempt it. Don't do it as the countdown is coming down to 3, 2, 1. You're not giving yourself enough time. So basic, common sense ideas when crossing a street. Again, you should have a full knowledge of your surroundings. You shouldn't be texting. You shouldn't be walking with your eyes focused on a cell phone or your ears even covered with earphones. You should be.
Oh, let me, could I just reinforce one thing with this photo I was thinking about when you were talking? So if I was standing on that corner and, if the walk light comes on and I start to walk, I'm probably going to look to the left first to make sure that those cars are stopping. But I just want to point out that research shows that the real danger is somebody that happens to be in Freeport, it's Merrick Road, is, as drivers, the most dangerous move that drivers make is a left turn. So if you get a walk signal there and you just start walking and then somebody is running that red light on Merrick, they make an aggressive left turn. They're not looking for pedestrians. They're just trying to get through that intersection really fast. So that's a very, very dangerous situation. So you gotta, you gotta look before you step in there. Even though you have the right of way, you have the walk signal, you gotta assess and always look for left turns, cars making left turns, because that's when, they might be speeding up a little bit. That's when you can get hurt really bad. Thanks.
Yeah, quite often they may be stuck in the middle of the intersection and they're anxious to get going.
Right.
And they'll just speed up real fast, and you may be looking, like you said, Mark, initially to the left to see if there's any cars that are not going to stop. But you have to be, very conscious of the fact that there are cars that are going to be possibly making turns, and you have to be sure that you're looking both directions, left and right. Next, please. Okay, other roadway designs and devices that can make it easier and safer for you to cross the street. These are time-tested, proven methods that engineers like to install to help pedestrians when it comes to making it safer for them to share the road with motor vehicles, bicycles, etc. One of them is called a road diet. What that essentially means is reducing the vehicle speeds and the number of lanes pedestrians cross. That's done with physical barriers. Usually you might see what's known as a bulb out. That's an extension of the sidewalk. It helps to slow down traffic. It makes it also easier for pedestrians to cross a big intersection because they have more sidewalk available. That provides less time for them to be on the actual roadway. It helps to also force, like I said, traffic to slow down by sometimes causing traffic to go into the same lane. This makes it, again, easier for pedestrians to cross, especially multi-laned highways or roadways. Pedestrian refuge islands. We talked a little bit about that before with Deauville Boulevard, the fact that there is an island there. Unfortunately, it's not really designed for pedestrians to wait, but pedestrian refuge islands usually allow pedestrians a safe place to stop, usually at a midpoint of the roadway. You might be familiar with Sunrise Highway. That would have what's considered to be a pedestrian refuge island. Very important, especially when you're crossing a long multi-laned highway, or again, if you are maybe aged or physically challenged and you have to walk slower. Very important to have that. Raised crosswalks. Those can help to reduce vehicle speeds. Those are ways for vehicle operators to realize, hey, I'm crossing into an area where there may be pedestrians, or we're heading into an area where pedestrians would like to cross the street. It's again, a physical technique used to notify vehicle operators that it's time for them to reduce their speeds. Crosswalk visibility enhancements, we're all familiar with those. Lighting, enhanced signs, we saw some pictures of that before. And finally, leading pedestrian intervals. Again, some of those push buttons that you may see at intersections that are made for pedestrians, they could lead to what are known as signalized intersection intervals. So by pressing that button, that might be giving you an extra few seconds, 3 or 4 seconds, before vehicles get their green signal to turn left or right. That provides you with a few extra feet and a few extra seconds of time to cross the street without the worry of vehicles making turns into pedestrian traffic.
Lowell, if I could just add here one thing.
Yeah.
Nassau and Suffolk counties both have passed several years ago legislation called Complete Streets legislation. And what this means is that anytime a new roadway is being constructed or an existing roadway is being reconstructed, the needs of all users should be taken into account when that roadway is redone or done. And these examples that you see here of things that make it safer for pedestrians are examples of things that should be done when roadways are being redesigned, and bikes lanes. So if you live in a village or an area where you're aware of this, you should really speak to, if you have a business association or a civic association or whatever, and check to be certain that these different devices that provide safety for users are actually going to be installed. So I just wanted to, you have to advocate for yourself. So you really do need to address these issues.
And that
Yeah,
includes
I would
curb
think
cutouts at intersections. Quite often you'll see where there are new roads and new sidewalks putting in, there'll be curb cutouts so that there are ramps that make it easier for those who are possibly in wheelchairs or physically challenged to avoid having to step down to the roadway. Many of them also have special anti-slip devices to make it safer for people in wheelchairs so they don't slide directly into the road. They are able to grip the ramps going down. Those are all part of the same project here that you're referring to with Safe Streets.
And I think that people on the South Shore, if you go to Lindenhurst, you know that they're doing some new work there. So you might see some of these engineering changes. They changed some ways that they park cars. They have reduced a few lanes. They have raised crosswalks because it's a new design, it's new construction, and it should be helpful in terms of pedestrian and bike safety.
And by the way, these are also recommendations and in many instances mandates that come down from the federal government to follow the ADA guidelines, the Americans with Disabilities Act. So quite often locales, communities, counties, they are required to install these when there is new construction. Next, please.
Okay, so now we'll talk a little bit about bicycle laws. So first, let me make the point that if you remember when, for those of us who are drivers, when we got our license, we had to learn the laws, and New York State has vehicle and traffic law, and it's a pretty thick book. But a big section within that of those laws are laws related to bicycles. Cyclists don't have to get a license though, so they may or may not know what these laws are. We'll go over a few, and it's really just a few, and first, I think it's helpful when people, if you bike, think of the bicycle as a vehicle. You know, when you drive your car, you obey the laws. When you're riding your bike, it's a non-motorized vehicle. Most of the times it's non-motorized. You also have a lot of laws to abide by as well. So first of all, as cyclists, we follow the same laws and rules of the road as motorists. So these photos or drawings on the right, if I'm riding my bike, I'm supposed to stop at the stop sign. I'm supposed to stop at a red light. I'm supposed to yield. We know that not all cyclists do that, but technically that is the law. Motorists have to do it, cyclists have to do it. The second bullet's an important concept, especially I think on Long Island, that cyclists do have the right to be on the road, and adult cyclists generally are riding on the street, not on sidewalks. It's helpful to think of sidewalks. They are for pedestrians. They're for people in wheelchairs who are also classified as pedestrians. They're for young children riding bikes because they don't have skills. But adults have the right to be out. So we have to share the road. As Cindy mentioned, complete streets. There's all types of road users, pedestrians, cyclists, motorists, you know, buses. So we do have the rights. When we're riding on the street as adults, we're supposed to ride by law over to the right as close to the curb as we can. We'll talk a little bit about lane markings in a while, and also just like pedestrians, though, cyclists, you can't be on the highway. It's a pretty dangerous thing. I've seen it a few times. You don't see it too often, but sometimes people riding their bikes on the highways. That's against the law. So we've talked about, you know, pedestrians, you're walking, there's no sidewalk. You want to face a driver and you want to make eye contact with them, it's a little different. For a cyclist, you ride with traffic. You want to be in the flow of the traffic because you're being considered a vehicle. So not everybody does that. Make sure it's pretty important because, you know, for many reasons to be in the flow. But if you think of a crash, obviously, if you're a cyclist and a driver, if the crash is like this head on, that's a pretty serious crash. You know, if a car side swipes you, it's not good, obviously, but that's, you know, the energy of that crash is going to dissipate a little bit more than a head-on crash. So very important, you know, to ride with traffic. Helmets, we're going to talk about helmets. But by law, by New York state law, children under the age of 14 and over the age of 1, don't ever take your child out on a bicycle if they're under the age of 1. They don't have strong enough neck muscles to even support their head. New York state law, under 14, you have to wear a helmet. And parents, if the child isn't wearing a helmet, if an officer enforces the law, the parents pay the summons. I believe it's a $50 summons. You might have noticed about a year ago that Nassau County actually changed the law for the county and made it under the age of 18. So some localities can change, can make the law differently, but most of the state, it's under the age of 14. I would, let me just add in here, talking about laws, but when you see everybody should wear a helmet. Let's just sort of, you know, make that point. When you see good cyclists, helmets are very, very effective at reducing the chance that you have a brain injury if you do fall. Next, please. So if you think of your bike, just like you think of your car, some of the equipment, some of these are laws. You have to have, on the front of your bike is a white reflector, on the back is a red reflector. Now, again, think of the similarities to a car. You have white in the front, like the headlights. You have red in the back, like brake lights. So most of the time when you buy a bike, you have them. Sometimes you don't, but if they break, the reflectors could cost $1 or $2, put them on. There's also usually, and I'm not 100% sure if it's the law to tell you the truth, but there are spoke reflectors, which are very helpful. The benefit of spoke reflectors are especially because the reflector is moving, you know, so the cars, and especially at night, if you're perpendicular, they see those reflectors a lot because they're in motion. And usually you also have reflectors on your pedals in the back, and they're very helpful for night driving also, because car lights beam down. So those generally they're yellow, they see those reflectors. I'll jump to the third point here. That's reflectors. You know, a lot of times when we talk to kids about bikes, they don't even really understand what a reflector does. But if you're riding at night when it's dark, just like your cars, when you got to turn the lights on, you know, a little before dusk, you have to have a white light in the front, a red light in the back. Don't go out riding at night without lights on your bike. If you don't have them, use a flashlight. I mean, by law, you should have the lights on your bike, because otherwise it's very hard, you know, for people to see you. And generally, or not, you see a lot today. I see this more. I ride a bit. People, good cyclists will turn their lights on even during the day. Just like some drivers put their lights on during the day. It's a split-second extra visibility. It doesn't hurt. So when you're riding on the street, by law, the most you can be is 2 abreast. If a car is passing you, you should shift. This is the law, but it's also courtesy. You don't want to be 2 abreast. You want to make it, you know, in a line, so they can pass easier. Suffolk County just passed the law within the past month that you have to, when we're driving and we pass a cyclist, we have to give them at least 3 feet. So that might mean we have to slow down and wait for the road to open up a little more to actually pass them. We should not be that close when we're passing a cyclist on the road. a little known law is that you have to have a bell or a horn on your bike. And I think the point there is, to me, the point is communication. The bell or horn is communication, just like a car has one. It's a way that you communicate with other road users. A lot of people don't have bell or horns. I don't know what the fine is for summons, and my hunch is not many summonses are written for that. But again, they're also, if you don't have it, they're not expensive. Go get a bell or horn put on your bike. Next, please. Next. So let's talk a little bit more about bike helmets. We know the law is under the age of 14, but everybody should wear a helmet. Let's just talk a little bit about how helmets fit. The drawings show you that they're parallel to the ground. I have a bike helmet here. So this is an adjustable bike helmet. And if it was small fitting, you know, it doesn't come down over my head. So I have to adjust my helmet because I have a very large head. It's hard to find helmets. And when I make it larger, you see that it comes down. And generally we tell people, try to get 2 fingers from your eyebrows to the bottom of the helmet, somewhere around there. Just one other word about helmets. There's multi-sport helmets. This is a bicycle helmet. If you happen to skateboard a lot or rollerblade, a multi-sport helmet has a little more protection here in the back. And so you don't have to use it, but you can if you want, because you tend to fall backwards when you're skateboarding, so you get more protection. On a bicycle, you tend to fall forward. So a bicycle helmet is giving you a little more protection here. That's why you want it down there. You've got these tabs here that slide up and down. Slide them to the bottom of your ear. It forms a V, both sides. And then when you clip the helmet, you want to get about 1 finger between the strap and your chin. So it's pretty snug, you know, so I'm moving around. It doesn't shake all that much. I see so many people riding their bikes like this, and actually it tends to be adults, it seems to me. It's not going to do you much good if the helmet falls off and then you crack your head. One last word about helmets. Oh, well, if it does fall, you get a crack in it, get a new helmet. Helmets are not necessarily expensive. You can pay all prices, but it's a very good investment. And just to make the point, for the parents who might be listening, check your kid's helmet, because we find very often when we talk to children that they have helmets that are a bit small for their heads, you know, because if they don't have an adjustable helmet, after a few years, you're going to have to get them a new helmet. Their heads are growing. So check their helmets and help them do this. And kids do this a lot. They may do this and they pinch if they don't, and then they don't want to wear the helmets. So make sure the straps are, they don't pinch themselves, but it is tight enough. Next.
We have here an example of 2 different types of bicycle lanes. One of them is a designated lane on an open road, the one on the left. And what you see there is an example of essentially sharing the road between cyclists and motor vehicles. Unfortunately, in this instance, and I don't know the reasons why, but you have what appears to be a vehicle blocking the bike lane. But this is an example that you find on many roads these days, dedicated areas where cyclists, and obviously they're on the right side of the road, going with the flow of traffic. A more ideal situation would be a safe cyclist lane. That is similar to what we have here in the photo on the right. That's Route 347. That road was completely redesigned, part of probably the Complete Streets concept. And what was done here was specially designated bicycle lanes, safe and far away from traffic. They're not sharing the road with motor vehicles. They have dedicated lanes. Ideally, that is what one would want to experience if they're cycling through areas that are connected to roadways. However, again, that's unique. Most instances where you do find designated bike lanes, they will be sharing the road, as in that picture on the left. So both motorists and cyclists have to be leery of the fact that they are sharing the road and look out for each other. Now we have two photographs of what transpires if somebody on a cyclist is the cyclist here is trying to negotiate traffic. It looks like he is trying to stay appropriately to the right of the road. There's a car blocking there that is forcing him to go into the traffic. Now, just so you know, Suffolk County, you might have heard about this. There was a little bit of concern over a new law that was passed. This law allows for cyclists to have 3 feet of clearance away from motor vehicles. So in the event that you are sharing the road with a cyclist, you are supposed to veer or give away 3 feet of space, have 3 feet of space separating you from the cyclist. Again, that's a safety factor. It's impossible, of course, while you're driving a vehicle, especially on a highway, to start measuring your distance from a cyclist. But that is an approximation of what the rules of the road are now for Suffolk drivers, to keep motorists, to keep at least 3 feet away from cyclists. And you can see the reason why. The situation in the photo on the left, very dangerous for that cyclist who has to go into oncoming traffic. And of course, on the right, you have this person who is opening the door to a vehicle, to a car, and probably they were not looking when they did open that door. They almost had a cyclist slam into their car. So it's important to always be aware of your surroundings, both as a cyclist as well as a motorist. Make sure that you keep that 3-foot distance. It's the safest thing to do. One other thing to bear in mind, quite often you may see cyclists who are on the road that are driving sort of wobbly. It looks almost as if they are drunk. Most of the time, it's not that they're drunk or moving deliberately into your lane and causing problems for you as a. It could be that there's a obstruction that is blocking their path. Maybe there's a pothole or there's debris in the road. And as a result, they have to make a quick move, making a turn into your lane, a left turn or a move into your lane. Be wary of that as well. Be aware that this could happen. And at a moment's notice, you may have to take evasive action just like they are. Try to keep some distance. That's why you have that 3-foot law. Try to keep some distance from the cyclist. Try to keep away as much as possible to give them a little bit of a break when they're driving.
All right, let's talk a little bit more about these devices that we spoke of early on in this presentation. These are examples of micromobility devices. They are by no means the only ones that are out there. The one on the bike, on the right with the woman on the bike is a City Bike, which is a rental throughout New York City in every borough except the Bronx. The one on the left is considered a scooter, an electric scooter. These are relatively inexpensive and you see a lot of young people using them. One thing to think about with these is that neither of them make any sound when they're riding on the road. Last year, approximately a year ago now, Governor Cuomo signed into law the right to be able to have these devices and ride them on the street. But that's about all the law covers. It doesn't really cover speed or how fast you may go. It doesn't require these to be licensed. It doesn't require insurance or any other thing that a motorist would have to do. So
nor does it require the use of helmets.
Right, it doesn't. So there have been problems with these already. There's another type of a scooter that you sit on and ride, like a little motorbike. That was introduced into Manhattan about a year ago, and 6 weeks later was pulled off the street because they already had 2 fatalities of people who fell off of these bikes. And that was because there's really no kind of instruction provided, no safety requirements or anything. And some of these vehicles will go quite fast. So they, right now, the average bicyclist wouldn't be able to go more than 15 to 20 miles an hour. An electric assisted bike might go faster, and a fully electric one goes faster yet. So, you have people and they're riding in the same lanes as pedestrians are walking in, either on the sidewalk or crossing the street. And now the electric devices are riding in the same bike lanes as bikes that are just pedal bikes. So there's, I would think, going to have to be some kind of additional legislation to say where people who use these devices are able to ride. But in the meantime, you will probably see them popping up around train stations, bus terminals, places where people could rent them, ride a mile or two and be home, and then come back again the other way in the morning, and without having to use a car. The e-bikes are all over not Long Island, but Long Beach does have a different vendor and does use these bikes. So I'm sure that there are many other communities out there who will have rentals of this nature. So I just really think it's something you need to be aware of and look out for, because you're not going to hear them. So you have to be very careful. All right, these are just some additional safety hints. We've covered most of this. The vest you see on the screen is a reflective vest that sometimes we're able to give out if we were doing in-person presentations. It makes you very visible. It's much like the vest that a construction worker would wear. This is the type of material or whatever that you want to call that's very reflective. So when we suggest that you wear something that's reflective, this would be an example of what it should look like. You should always walk on the sidewalk if there is one. When there is no sidewalk, and this is the most important, is that you walk facing traffic. You should cross the street at a corner whenever possible, or in a crosswalk, and preferably if it's signalized. As I said, be safe, be seen. You should not be texting or talking on your cell phone while you are crossing a street. Put your phone down for the 20 seconds it takes you to get across the street. If you're going to be walking or biking at night, it's particularly important that you wear reflective garments. Many bicycle helmets have lights on them. There are now bikes that have lights on the tires, and it's very, very helpful that the motorist can see the bicyclist. And for some people, if you find that you do have to walk home from a train or from other public transportation to your house and it is dark out, you can use a flashlight or the light on your phone to just to, help you, so that if the sidewalk is broken up or if it's dangerous crossing, you can see what you're walking into.
A few more tips for cyclists. Let me start by saying one of the best things that cyclists, especially adult cyclists, can do is just to be a consistent bike rider. So don't be swerving, but don't speed up and slow down. Drivers are trying to assess, that's cyclists. They make quick decisions, and they say that's a fast rider, that's a slow rider, that's a child. So they're not such a good, but be consistent when you're riding your bike out in traffic. This time of year, if you're just getting your bikes out, think of ABC. ABC is check the air in your tires, make sure your tires are pumped up. It's safer, it's more comfortable. Check your brakes, make sure they're working. Obviously, we wouldn't drive our car if the brakes weren't working. And C is the chain, make sure that it's greased up a little bit. If you haven't had your bike tuned up in a few years, bring it to a nice little bike shop. get a tune-up. It's not going to cost you that much money. You can't have more than, if a bicycle, this diagram here is a one-person bike. You can't have a second person on there. No one can be on your handlebars. Lowell mentioned this before, for drivers and for cyclists, you can never have two earbuds in. You can only have one at the most. You got to hear what's going on outside. And well, I think you read the other ones. That's just a few more tips for being safe on a bicycle.
All right. Well, thank you so much to all of our panelists, Lowell, Mark, and Cindy, and our New York Coalition for Transportation Safety team members behind the scenes, Liz and Lynn. And many thanks to everyone who took the time to virtually attend this program today. Before we let you go, we do just want to let you know about this scholarship opportunity that we have for Long Island High School seniors. They submit an essay of 500 words or less, and they could win $1,000 to put toward their college education. So please visit walksafeli.org/essay for more information on that. And if you'd like more information about anything discussed here today, more information about the scholarship, or if you're interested in coordinating a program like this in your own community, you can reach out to Cindy at the Coalition. There's her contact information, or you can reach out to me. There's my contact information for you as well. And we just have a few more resources for you. The Walk Safe Long Island website is where you can find New York State laws, like some of the ones we discussed today, as well as our upcoming programs. The New York State Governor's Traffic Safety Committee is a great resource. So is the New York State Department of Transportation site, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration website, and the Institute for Traffic Safety Management and Research has some really great crash data if you're interested in learning more about that. So once again, thank you so much for joining us, and stay safe out there.